Guys over here may want to move back that way. I think you may have trouble reading the slides on the wall up here. To start with, and remind me again of my stop time here.
9:30.
Okay, so at 5 minutes before, will somebody give me a sign just to make sure? Thank you. So very quickly here, Don has introduced me as being a certified instructor for LinkedIn. What that means is we were actually, my partner and I, you see listed here, we're certified by a group called Integrated Alliances, which is based in Denver, and then we're the North Texas affiliate. The reason I say that is LinkedIn specifically does not do training. They don't do certification, and they expect third parties such as ourselves to do that for them. Just a little bit about Integrated Alliances. You can read up there that they started in Denver. You'll notice our CEO and current founder is Mike O'Neill, has 27,000 connections. We'll talk about that in just a minute. We do a number of trainings, whether it's webinars, workshops, or whatever. Just real quickly here, what I'd like to do is get a sense of where each of you are at by a show of hands. So how many of you are on LinkedIn today? And how many of you with your hands up have more than 200 connections? Sort of. Okay. How many of you are on Facebook from a business perspective? Keep your hands up. Okay. And how many of you are using YouTube? How many of you use Twitter? Sort of. Okay. So that gives me a sense of where everybody's at, and really that's why I want to start with this definition of social media. I won't read it to you, you guys can read it to yourself, but it's really the key from which we're going to start. One of the important things, excuse me, is that social media is now becoming a fundamental shift in marketing. As with other marketing tools, this is now taking over. So some of the things you need to think about as you're going to use social media is the influencing, the attention, and the ability to respond. As you look to the right-hand side of this slide, you'll see some quotes that are very important, or percentages, if you will. Right now, 33% use social media to do research. 47% say that their decisions are based on social media influences, and 26% of the people change their mind after reading about a product based on social media. I mean, these are absolutely incredible statistics. For most of us, this is kind of an interesting slide. If you look to Facebook, MySpace, which has dropped off a little bit, Twitter, and LinkedIn, that you see by the various generations who's actually using it. Is there anybody here that's a little bit surprised by perhaps the baby boomer percentages up there? And we've got at least one, if not more than that, who haven't admitted it. One of the other things I think that's important as you think about social media and whether it's right for your business or not are some of the things that you see listed in the bar graph below. The top one, generated exposure for my business, 81%. Mike and I were talking about that a little bit earlier. If you improve your exposure for 81% of the people, that's pretty important. Even more important, though, is when you go to the bottom where it says, help me close my business, 35%. Now, what we have found is that where several years ago, if you didn't have a website, you weren't really a credible business. The same thing is starting to be true today, that if you're not on LinkedIn, if you don't have a business wall on Facebook, if you don't do some level of Twittering, it doesn't give you the same level of credibility of somebody who does. So some of the benefits are listed here. Probably one of the most significant is the bottom one, which is reduces your marketing and operational costs. The majority of things that you can do with LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter are free. It's only your time. Now, your time isn't free, but compared to perhaps going out and doing a direct mail campaign or some of the others, it has a different level of cost associated to it. So particularly those of you starting your businesses where time is probably what you have more of than extra funds, it's a great way to get started. So here's a couple facts. In the case of LinkedIn, currently there are 68 million members that become connections. Generally speaking, it's a professional, if you will, network. You build it based on trusted colleagues, and it's an absolutely incredible database. I'll talk about that a little bit more when I specifically hit on LinkedIn. In the case of Facebook, there are currently 400 million users designated as fans. It tends to become more informal and more personal, and it's more word of mouth. So the way I would describe some of the differences is if you're in LinkedIn and you don't have a professional picture out there, and you don't have what we'll talk about in terms of a profile that's robust and accurate, then you probably shouldn't be on LinkedIn, okay? Because it's professional and that's what the expectation is. Facebook is actually, I'll call it, running a little bit toward the LinkedIn in the sense that now that people are putting business walls out there, they are becoming much more predominant, but more informal. So it still needs to be professional though. It's not the picture of the one we joke about, you know, all our kids with their beer bottle. None of us, of course, but all our kids with beer bottles and that kind of thing, but make it much more professional. In the case of Twitter, there are currently 75 million members. Most of you that are using it know that you send messages that are comprised of 140 characters. For those of us that either have short attention spans or talk very quickly, Twittering actually is a great way to communicate because you're limited to the 140 characters. And it's a great mechanism for questions and comments. So as you start to think about your social media strategy, first of all, or as you get started, you should be thinking about your initial strategy. You're going to create a presence. You want to be true to your brand, your customers, and your team. And as you read through the rest of these bullet points, what you're going to find is you're going to evolve. You're going to start, you're going to change things, you're going to tweak it, and you will continue to evolve the more you work with these. Let's now move into LinkedIn. Now, the way that I would describe LinkedIn is it's one more strategic marketing tool. It's not the only one you're going to use in the future. Just like you don't use Constant Contact by itself, you don't use some of the services of Brian and the others individually, you use a number of marketing tools together. LinkedIn is the same way. What we show here on this particular overhead gives you just an idea of what all is involved with LinkedIn. You'll see at the bottom it says over 60 components to LinkedIn. So one of the things that somebody said to me just a few minutes ago was, well, I've just started, but it's almost overwhelming. You're absolutely right. There is so much out there now that it does take a while to get into it. So I'm going to share a few things here, and then quite frankly, I'm going to encourage you to participate in some workshops. The first thing you want to do, though, is build your personal profile. Now, this profile is just like your web page. So you want it to be your identity, you want it to talk about your business and yourself, but most importantly, you want it to be marketing oriented and you want keywords in it. One of the things you're doing by being on LinkedIn is you want yourself to be picked up when people are looking for your type of business. So the keywords are absolutely critical. On the right-hand side, a little bit hard to read in the back of the room, but fundamentally you see the basic elements of the profile where you talk about your history, and then you have an area called summary and specialties. Within the summary and specialties, this is where it's extremely important to get those keywords about your business that you want picked up in the searches. The second thing that's great about LinkedIn is it provides the metrics for you. So you want to know what's happening. You can tell in LinkedIn how many people have viewed your profile in the last number of days and so forth. What it also allows you to do is to go in and see generally. So it will not provide you the name of the person unless it's somebody that you're connected with, but it will give you a sense. And quite frankly, with a little bit of intuition, you can probably figure it out in most cases.